Hey gang, I'm really excited to bring you this next video because it's the first time we've been someplace where the focus was all on wildlife, animals, and nature. And so even though I'll cover in this Kuala Lumpur as well, it's mainly focused on our time out at Borneo. So with that, let's get to it. All right, so just to get on with the geography part of things, when we left Bangkok, we flew directly into Kuala Lumpur. From Kuala Lumpur, we then flew out to the island of Borneo and the Malaysian state of Sabah. We went to the capital city, which is Kota Kinabalu. So that was the first stop. From there, we flew over to Sandakan. And that's where the true adventure began. We headed from Sandakan, we went over to the Kinabalu River and spent some time out on a river lodge, and that was all wildlife. You can see here that, you know, one of the challenges with getting to wildlife out on Borneo is the fact that really it's a large amount of the land has been converted to palm oil plantation. That's what's basically taking the place of primary rainforest. After the time out on the river lodge, we came back and spent a few days in a town called Sepilok, where we went to the Rainforest Discovery Center. And then after that, we took a boat out to what's called Turtle Island, but it's out of this marine refuge. After Turtle Island, we came back to Sepilok, spent a few more days, and then headed onwards to Singapore. First things first, Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur is interesting. I think I found it a really nice city for things like food, and the condo that we stayed in was very nice, but their public transportation system, I feel like it's really disjointed. There's a whole bunch of different metro lines. There's light rail, monorail, subway, underground, and they aren't very well connected, and they don't necessarily go to where you really want to go. And what I quickly noticed was this is a city where the car reigns supreme, a little bit like American cities, but definitely like LA, where you've got these protected guideways for cars and big, multi-lane crossings with very few pedestrian-safe crossings. They have overpasses and overbridges for pedestrians. So, like, even to go visit the night market, we were having to, cross 4 lanes of traffic, and we would basically cross at, there was no nearby crossing, so everybody would just go down to the road and dodge between the cars, which, it wasn't really unsafe because there wasn't that much traffic most hours, but you were still using the island in the middle to protect yourself and to make the trip safe. Getting beyond all that, I think I'll just say we really had a good time with the food there in Kuala Lumpur. We got some amazing crispy pork that was really well done. The place had gotten Michelin recognition, and it was really worth going over to. We also went over to Chinatown, and there were a lot of good meals there. Things like lemongrass, clams. Yeah, the food was good. Also, very good Indian food. That's the other thing I should say. We even from our condo, because frequently it was raining, there were thunderstorms, especially in the afternoon. In our condo, we would just get Grab Eats, which is basically the equivalent of Uber Eats, but we got Indian food because it was something good to go, and it would last us a couple days. And then there were big shopping centers, so we were able to do things like get Katie some new hokas at one of the shopping centers. So you can get, all the typical American brands, or, well, I should say not American, the universal brands, all the big ones especially. This is a running theme through all the Asian shopping centers, is you can get things like Cartier and Yves Saint Laurent and, all of those crazy brands, Gucci. They all are all over, at least the first floor of every shopping center seems to be that. But you can also get things like Adidas, Nike, Hoka, those things, which so that makes them a bit more useful to us. The last thing to talk about with Kuala Lumpur is, the iconic building that you see. It was in I think it was one of the James Bond movies. So that building is in Kuala Lumpur. It really is an impressive structure, and the way they light it and the exterior of it is really pretty, as well as having a very nice park around it. And that's where they do kind of a light show. They have a water light show. They have the fountains, and they're lit up, and they do different colors and dance, dance as fountains do in places like Las Vegas and things. So that was fun to see. It was a good experience where a lot of people were there, and so it made for a nice evening thing to do. Moving on to the Borneo part of the adventure. So, as I mentioned, we flew into a place called Kota Kinabalu, and immediately, maybe it was just being a smaller city, but it felt a lot nicer to us. It's still a little bit of a rough and tumble port city. It immediately felt like we were rarer, meaning it wasn't overrun with Western tourists. Even in Kuala Lumpur, in the zone we were in anyway, we noticed a lot of tourists. And I should stop saying Western, because actually many of the tourists here in this part of the world are Eastern tourists. They're China and Korea and Japan send a lot of people to Malaysia and elsewhere in Southeast Asia. But it just felt more real. We had nice little night markets right outside where, I was the only non-native person walking around and buying things in the local market. So when we went out and grabbed little things like fry breads and stuff from the locals, we felt, like we were getting more of a cultural experience than we did in places like Kuala Lumpur. What we did do was a river tour, and I'll go back in and insert the name of the river at this point, or I'll flash it up on the screen so I don't butcher it. But we did a tour where we jumped into a van with quite a few other folks, and then drove a couple hours to the west. And went on this river tour, and it was specifically to get out and see the proboscis monkeys. So that was really the first big new sighting we had of creatures and nature. We went down there and got a good sightings of proboscis monkeys. The tour also included kind of going out to a beach area, which was really just a flat between the river and the sea, and it created, because of the fine layers of sand there, the fineness of the sands, it meant that you could get this really nice mirror effect. And again, it was overcast. We didn't get as good. I think a sunny day it would have been, it would have been evening, it would have been spectacular. But it was still an impressive view, and lots of people were taking good Instagrammable photos, and the locals had kind of a firework display, which was pretty cool, and they showed off their skills there. From Kota Kinabalu, the next thing we did was we went out to a place called Sandakan, which is a city over more on the Coral Sea coast. So we went out to the River Lodge, and I will say, so when I was doing all my research about how to see Borneo, how to see orangutans, what I found suggested that, trying to do it on the cheap or trying to do it at a lower cost level was going to probably result in something that wasn't as satisfactory to us. And so, this is where how often do we splurge comes up. And so, kind of at least on a monthly basis, and sometimes it's multiple times a month, we'll do a big splurge. I think that to a certain degree, Angkor Wat was that. But this was a bigger splurge. We stayed at a very nice lodge along the river. So we got picked up by a car, driven out to the river, which was several hours away, and then took a river taxi across to the lodge. Like I said, the lodge was 4-star. The place I picked, you know, it was basically awarded things in National Geographic, so it's where those National Geographic expeditions stay when they come out to this part of Borneo. So yeah, a very nice lodge, and we felt that. We definitely were in the midst of a different type of crowd. One thing that was the deciding factor for that lodge was one of the things they had was about a 600-meter boardwalk that they had built in a loop out around. So on top of having the structured cruises that they did, you know, the river cruises to go look for wildlife, they also allowed you to access that boardwalk all the time. So that became key to my enjoyment of the place, is having the freedom to look around. So that kind of sold the lodge. If you've never taken a river cruise or looked for wildlife from a boat, it's actually a really neat experience. And as we were skimming along, you know, along the river, it was a beautiful day. You know, you're watching the river and life on the river just go by. People, you know, kids taking a boat to school. It's really a neat way to see a country and to look for wildlife. You know, you get a better feel for the country because the rivers, before we had roads and things, and oftentimes in the jungles, this persisted for much longer than it did elsewhere in the world. The rivers were the highways. Everything came up and down rivers. It's a nice thing, and I found myself thinking about, like, geez, you know, I could buy some land on this river and, you know, build a place that would be comfortable for us, and, you know, spend the money to have a nice boat and go out and look for birds and wildlife every day, and it would be a pretty nice life. It would be a fun existence, at least for a couple of years. I'm sure it would be bad when it flooded, but, you know, that would be the time of the year that we would take off. Anyway, just saying, this is a really luxury way to get out and look for wildlife. And you do see quite a bit of wildlife because, of course, a river is an edge, so edge habitat predominates, and it's an important edge because of the water source that's needed for so many other things that animals have to do. So you do see stuff, and it lends itself to seeing the big things. Of course, you can see as things are flashing by. You're not really going to notice a small frog along a leaf, you know, at speed, but you can certainly get the primates because, you know, our cousins, they are not stealthy. You spot them by hearing big crashes, by seeing leaves and branches shifting in a way that they shouldn't. That's the way you know you're near primates. And sure enough, we saw all the major primates we would want to see, things like silver langurs or leaf monkeys. We saw the pigtail macaque and long-tailed macaque. So we saw all that, and then of course we got orangutans, and we saw really nice orangutan footage of wild orangutans. Got to see them fairly close. It felt like a really nice experience. And then we had the chance to see pygmy elephants, but did not. Well, beyond the monkeys, we mainly saw birds, and of the birds, we really saw hornbills. So we got quite a few of the major hornbills. The one that everybody needs to see that's the hallmark bird here is the rhinoceros-billed hornbill. We got several good views of that, both flying and the vocalization, which is a fun one. But the other mammal beyond monkeys that we saw was a thing called a colugo, which is a very unique primate. So outside of the lemurs, the colugo is this primitive primate that is a flying primate, meaning it's a gliding animal. And it's unique, it's special too, even in the gliding world, because of the amount of control it has over the various edges of its gliding wings. It's actually able to have one of the more impressive glide slopes of any other mammal, better than any of the flying squirrels, or of course the gliding lizards and gliding snakes don't do very well. So it can actually go a very long distance. The final thing, talking about the Rainforest Lodge area, was that boardwalk. That boardwalk became critical for our night walks, and one of the things that we enjoyed the most was Katie and I would just go out by ourselves at night with a headlamp. And you know, I had done a ton of night walks in Costa Rica as a guide. I used to take people out and look for stuff, and I will say that I am really impressed with the kinds of things that we were able to see, because we spotted several species of palm civet, the banded palm civet and the common palm civet, and that's like trying to see a cat at night, which is not something you can do in very many parts of the world. And we got a good view of that, and then we saw a couple funny creatures. One of them was the Sunda stink badger, which is, you know, the first thing I thought when I saw it was kind of a skunk. It had a little bit of a white head and a white little tip in its, I'll say its tail, but on its butt. As it got closer, I was like, no, you know, what is that? It's not a skunk. There aren't skunks down here. And it did have a badger look to it. It was snuffling along the ground like you would expect a badger to. But as it got closer, I was like, what is it, a pig? Because it had no tail. It just had like a little stumpy tail. And the tail, though, was white. And once I got back to actually look it up, that was what it was this stink badger thing. And it does secrete like a skunk does. But we got to see one of those up close and pretty nice along the way as well. The last thing that we got to see, which again was pretty special, another mammal. You know, one thing I don't know whether everybody knows, but you know, at night you use headlamps and you look for eye shine, and mammals generally have a big eye, a very bright shine, and usually kind of in a red or orange spectrum. And you can see spiders, they have little tiny green eyes when you're looking around for those at night. But when you wear a headlamp, you really do get to see that reflected light. And I saw that, and as I started creeping up on this critter, and I kept trying to not put light in its eyes because I thought it would frighten it, but when I finally got close enough, and this is one of the few things I actually took a photo of, which I'll show, but it's blurry because night photos are hard. But it was a mouse deer, so really a cool new species for me, and one I wasn't expecting to see at all. I mean, I know it exists theoretically, but I didn't remember that it was in Borneo or a tropical species necessarily. But yeah, to get to see that was really special, and it was all the much more special because Katie and I basically did that on our own, and we went out and saw things. And so that was kind of ultimately the great thing about this part of the trip, was getting to do things on our own. After that, we went back and went to a place in Sepilok, which is called the Rainforest Discovery Center, or RDC for short. And it's a patch of rainforest that's right next to fairly close to the Sepilok Orangutan Rehabilitation Center, which we had gone to earlier. They have a canopy system there where you've got on large bridges and towers, so you're up in the canopy section, and that was really nice to go explore and look for birds and other wildlife. It really made a huge difference. Katie and I felt like we could do tons of things on our own. So we were up there every morning, and you know, what do Katie and I like to look for? Well, we watched lots of squirrels. There were very large squirrels. There's one of the largest squirrels in the world is this squirrel in Borneo. So that was really exciting to see and get to see that big of a squirrel. And then strangely enough, one of the smallest squirrels in the world is also in Borneo, and we had the good fortune to also see that. You'll see it's very quick, and I'll probably slow it down here to let you actually get a better look at it. But that bugger was really quick, and he was very different, but a little bit more like a chipmunk, but definitely a squirrel. So those were fun. We also got a chance to look at birds early in the morning, so we did a lot of birding while we were there. And then the final thing that we did was we did pay extra for a night walk so that we could do a tour with one of the guides there to see things at night. And that was really interesting. We got to actually see a Bornean python, which was interesting. It wasn't, I don't have a very good picture of that, but you know, it was just cool that the guide was able to spot it. And the final thing, the big thing that we really saw was we got to see a tarsier. This was a Bornean tarsier. It's one of 3 species, another one of the species in the Philippines. And then the last species is on the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia. And we might try and go see that someday, but this trip anyway, we're just going to get to see 2 different species. I think that's about it for the Rainforest Center. Like I said, it was an excellent part of our time in Borneo. Gave us a lot of extra freedom to do things on our own and not have to pay for tours every time. So from Sepilok, the other thing that we did was we went out to a place called Turtle Islands, where it is a little bit unique. It's one of the places in the world, one of the few places in the world where turtles aren't seasonal. They don't have a nesting period and then a hatching period. Instead, they're visiting every night and potentially having hatches every morning or night. It was a good trip. It was interesting. They did not allow us to take video, but the big thing here was we got to see turtles both nesting, and then we got to see turtle hatchlings, and we got to actually release some turtle hatchlings into the ocean. So super special stuff. That, you know, getting to see biology at its most basic level, you know, the turtles going back into the sea and mother turtles coming up and digging a nest and then laying their eggs. So those are truly good moments that we're getting to share here. So all of this, you know, made Borneo one of our favorite places so far on the trip. And someplace I think we're definitely going to be heading back to. It's got a lot to offer. So that wraps up things. The next video I'll do will be on our time in the Philippines. I'll also cover Singapore. I may actually make those 2 separate videos just to keep these a little shorter. But yeah, Singapore and the Philippines comes up next. For the extra that I'm going to show now, so this is the end of my main thing, but the extra this time is something that some people may find a little bit horrifying, but it's part of our search for good urban wildlife. Here's a bunch of rats just having a great time with some garbage in Kuala Lumpur, and we've seen this all over Asia. We're very good now at noticing rats in the middle of the night when we're walking around places, but this is them at their most joyous and most squabbly too, but it's good video. So catch you later. Bye. I know.